Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to do for loops in Java. So in order to get started, let's go ahead and create a new file. And we'll just call this one lesson6.java. And we'll drag that into Notepad. And we'll say public class lesson6. And we'll create our main. So for loops can be a little bit tricky at first, but I promise you they're pretty easy to learn as long as you have a firm grasp of the basic parts. So we'll start with the first thing, which is the keyword for. Now this is the same keyword in just about every programming language that I know of, and it basically means you're creating a loop that's going to run for a set number of times. So the for basically means for this many times. We're going to open up a set of parentheses here, and first thing we're going to do is create an iteration variable. So we'll call it int I, and that is our iteration variable. And we'll set it equal to an initial value. Let's start with 1. So that's our iterator. So we're going to start the process of iteration, and we're going to start that at 1. And the next thing we need is an escape condition. The escape condition says that this loop will run as long as this condition is true. And it is a Boolean condition or a Boolean expression. And let's just go. Let's iterate from 1 to 5. So we're starting at 1, and we're going to continue to iterate as long as I is less than or equal to 5. So that Boolean expression right there is our escape condition. It means that as soon as this condition returns false, our loop is going to exit. And then we're going to do something called iterating up by 1. And basically what it is, if I is starting at 1, then every time the loop runs, we're going to add 1 to I, and that's how we're going to iterate up. And we're going to do that by going I++. Now, I++ is an abbreviation of I equals I plus 1. That can further be abbreviated to I plus equals 1. And then now in the modern days of Java, we can just go I++. So that just means add 1 to I. And we open up a set of brackets for our for loop. So now inside the for loop, let's print something. So let's go system out println, and we'll print I. So each time this loop runs, it's going to print the value of I. So I is going to start at 1, and it is going to go all the way to 5, and it's going to iterate up by 1 each time. So start at 1. Next time the loop runs, it's going to iterate up by 1, and it's going to be 2. Then it's going to still be less than 5, so the loop will run again, and we'll print out the 2. Then we iterate up by 1 again. We're equal to 3, still less than or equal to 5. So the loop runs. We print the 3. We go up to 4, which is still less than 5, so we print the 4. We go up to 5, which is still less than or equal to 5, so we print the 5. And we iterate up to 6. That is not less than or equal to 5, so the loop exits. So we have effectively printed the numbers 1 through 5. And to double check that, we'll go ahead and run it. And let's see. Oh, I was running that in Python. I was doing Python before. So there we go. So I actually typed that all out correctly this time. So we start at 1, because that's where we start. Iterates up by 2, by another 1, gives me 2, 3, 4, and then 5. It iterates up by 1 again. It's equal to 6. This condition is false, and the loop exits, and I don't print the 6. So that is about as basic as it gets with a for loop. If you wanted to make this a little bit more fun, we could actually, instead of print line, just put print here. And then instead of just the I could say I plus a little space. So we could print our numbers all in a row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so in terms of basics, there's now only a couple more things that we need to learn about loops. And one is that loops don't always have to iterate forward. They can actually go backward. And the way we do that is instead of adding to I, we would subtract from I. And just like if we wanted to just subtract 1 each time the loop runs, instead of plus plus, just like we can do the plus plus here, we can do minus minus. And that will subtract 1 from I each time the loop runs. So if we're going to iterate down, though, we also have to swap our start and our stop numbers. So in this case, if we're going down, I have to actually start at 5, and then I have to say greater than or equal to 1 instead of less than or equal to. So my escape condition has to change to greater than or equal to 1 because I'm iterating from 5 all the way down to 1. And I'm going down, so I'm starting at 5, I'm going down by 1 each time, and I'm going to run the loop and print out I as long as I is greater than or equal to 1. So it should get me all the way down to 1. And if I run that, you can see 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that works just fine. Now the other thing you need to learn before we start having some real fun is that we also don't have to iterate by 1. So whether I'm going positive or negative, I can iterate by other numbers besides 1. So let's say I'll put this back to 1, and I want to iterate up to 10. So I'll go less than or equal to 10. And instead of this, I will do the abbreviated plus equals 2. So actually here I want to start with 2, and I'm going from 2 all the way on up to 10, and I'm iterating by 2. So if you do this, so it's the same thing. I'm starting at 2, I'm adding another 2, which is 4, still less than or equal to 10, adding another 2, which is 6, still less than or equal to 10, adding another 2, which is 8, still less than or equal to 10, all the way up to 10. Add another 2, that's 12, way greater than 10, so we stop at 10. So now that those basics are out of the way, you're probably wondering what we're going to use this for. So I'll give you a really quick practical application for something like this. Let's say I wanted to take some user input for this. So let's go import Java util scanner and create a new scanner object. So system input, and now that I have that, I can do a user prompt, and let's say please enter the number of cookies. So let's say I have an oven that bakes 25 cookies at a time, and I need to bake a set number of cookies that are going to be based on an input, and I want this computer program to automate the number of cookie batches that I'm going to make. And now I'm going to create an int variable for the number of cookies that I need, and I'll just call this cookies, and it's equal to keyboard.nextInt. And this is the total number of cookies that I need. And so now I'm going to create my for loop. And this part's going to get complicated because I need to create an int variable, but this is not the total number of cookies that I need. This has to be the number of cookies that I have left to make. So I'm going to start that number, and I'm going to call this one needed. And I'm going to set it equal to cookies. So whatever I put in for cookies. And as long as needed is greater than or equal to 0, that function I'm going to continue to make batches of cookies. And actually, let's not do 0, let's go greater than 0. So as long as that's greater than 0, I'm going to still make batches of cookies. And my oven only makes batches of 25. So I'm going to iterate needed down by minus 25. So need a certain number of cookies that's from a user input. As long as my needed number of cookies is greater than 0, I'm going to continue to run the loop, and I'm going to go down by 25 each time because that's the batch size that my oven makes. So now inside here, I'm going to out print line, and I'll say cookies needed, and to that I will add needed. And then I can system out print line. Let's go ahead and create the batch number that I'm on. So I'll create the batch number, and I'll add a variable called batch to that, but then I have to create it. So I'll go up here, and just outside my for loop I'll say int batch, and I'll start the batch out at 1. And this is a way to double up the functionality of your for loop, because I'm starting off at 1 before the for loop starts, and then I'm actually adding batch into the program here, or into my for loop, and it's getting printed out, so it's in that print statement. And then each time the loop runs, I can also add 1 to batch here. I don't just have to do what's in the for loop. I can create this here, and so each time this code actually runs, I'm adding 1 to batch. So my batch size actually, or my batch number actually goes up by 1 each time I run a batch. So then at the end here, when everything's all done and all my cookies are out and receipts are printed, I can say, let's go order up, just like SpongeBob. And let's go ahead and get a look at this whole thing before we run it, and hopefully that'll run first try. Since I'm doing batch sizes of 25, let's go ahead and use 75 here, and you can see I need 75, so I make batch number 1. When batch number 1 is complete, I need 50, so I make batch number 2. When batch number 3 completes, I don't need any, so my order's up. So that is your basic setup for a for loop, and it may seem a little bit tricky at first, but again, if you understand the basic components of what's going on here, you shouldn't have a problem. So we start with the for statement, and remember that for means for this many times, and then inside here we tell you how many times, or we tell Java how many times. That's all this stuff really amounts to. So we give it a starting point, which is this variable is starting off at the value of cookies, which I put in 75 for, but it's a user input, so it could be anything. And the loop's going to run. This is, remember, our escape condition. As soon as this returns false, the loop exits. So our escape condition is here, and it tells the loop to run as long as the number of cookies needed is greater than 0. And this part is your iterator, and it is telling us to iterate the needed variable down by 25 each time the loop runs. So those are, it looks complicated on the surface, but if you understand those 3 basic things, or those 4 basic things, it becomes progressively simpler. Now this is just the stuff that prints out, or the code that runs over and over and over again 25 times. And it's just a bunch of simple print statement. The only kind of complicated thing here is the fact that I started this batch number out at 1 up here, and here I'm adding 1 to it each time the loop goes. So that one's pretty simple too. I start at 1. Each time the loop runs, I add 1 to the batch, because that means I've run a batch. So now that we have the basic structure of a for loop down, we're going to start using them with other functions. And the first one's going to be on the next video, where I'm going to show you how to use loops with string methods.